Most change leaders don't just battle resistance, we actually create it. This time on Thoughts on Change. Welcome to Thoughts on Change, the podcast about the messy, political, emotional, deeply human side of leading change. I'm Kelly, and I believe anyone can implement lead tools until they actually have to get people to use them. Around here, we talk about how to move culture, how to build credibility, and how to influence without bulldozing. Basically, how to herd humans without losing your mind. If you've ever tried to implement something new and watched people immediately resist, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about how we don't just face resistance, we create it, and how to shift our approach to make change easier. How many of you have faced resistance and pushback in the last week? And how many of you have gone home exhausted from fighting this resistance? A lot of times we think the problem is with the other person. The person resisting and saying, we've always done it this way, and that won't work here. Or the leader who isn't bought into the change. These challenges do exist, but the real problem that we can actually control lies much closer in our approach to supporting people through change. We actually invite the very resistance we are trying to stop. Here's how it happens. When we experience people resisting, we default to putting on our boxing gloves to go fight their resistance. And fighting resistance takes several forms. There's the accommodator who bends over backward to make sure their image is maintained, more than the change. There's the avoider who stays away from the people who will really challenge them and the change. And there's the logicster who talks you to death about the data and reasoning for why the change is good. And there's also the controller who thinks the only way to get it done is to just do it all themselves. Each of these resistance fighters end up inviting even more resistance by their actions. I remember this time when I was working at an aerospace manufacturer and we were in backorder to our customer. We needed to improve output in the bottleneck cell. And I did what any good CI practitioner would do. I started closest to the customer and I walked upstream. Process by process, I went looking for the bottleneck. Then I found it. It was very obvious, a mountain of inventory before this step and nothing after it. So I started digging into what was happening at this process, and I got many different stories. So I decided that the best way to learn the truth was by putting up a tool called an hour-by-hour chart. And I went to the operators and supervisors and told them we needed to put up an hour-by-hour in the cell so that we could better understand the problems they were having so we could fix them. And they said, we've already tried that. We don't have time. And my favorite, if you just left us alone, we'd get it done. I spent a lot of time with them, trying to work with them and convince them of the changes. And it was only after a lot of struggle and some pretty pointed feedback that I learned the truth. I was spending all of my time preaching the virtues of an hour by hour. I thought that if they could just understand the why behind the tool, they would accept it with open arms. Boy, was I wrong. My standard approach was creating even more resistance. I had a resistabot at the wheel. And after this and many other similar situations, I began to see that there are several default ways that change leaders deal with resistance. And since I'm a big nerd and Transformers fan, I decided to name them the Resistabots. So let me introduce you to them and how they create resistance. First up, we have Commandax, the controller, whose signature move is override. They push forward, even if it means doing it all themselves. Commandax has no patience for the time it takes to help people through the emotional side of change. They just need to get it done. Next up is Factron, the rational. Their signature move is data dump. They bury people with reason, data, and logic. With Factron, the only way through change is to look at the data. There is no room or need for emotions. Next, we have Soft Step, the accommodator. Their signature move, vanishing consensus. They will do everything they can to keep the peace and maintain their image, leaving no one sure where they actually stand. Then we have Shell Out, the avoider. Their signature move is silent retreat. They do everything they can to avoid conflict, hoping that by ignoring it, it will just go away. Then Quick Shift, the fixer. Signature move, rapid patch. They just want to get in and fix the problem fast, even if it means they don't really understand it. And then last, Doc Trina, the preacher. This was me. Signature move, righteous beam. They work to inspire people to come along with them through the change with no room for any other perspectives. Have any of you seen these resistobots in your work? Can you see how each of these resistobots can make a situation worse and make people resist even more? Here's the hard truth. We are all of these resistobots at different times, but we don't have to be slaves to them. We can defeat them. Here's how you can break away from your resistobots. Transform. First, you have to face the bot. This is where you need to take a step back and see which resistobots are at play in yourself and in others. Then you can observe the scene. Look around and see how these resistobots are influencing the situation and spreading resistance. Next, you can reveal the root, which we talked about in the last episode of Thoughts on Change. Go uncover the future stories and fears that are behind the resistance. And finally, once you understand the fears, you can make an alliance. Connect with people through curiosity and compassion instead of through your resistobot. Remember my story from before about the hour-by-hour chart? Well, I took a step back and faced my resistobot. Doc Trina was definitely at the wheel. I was spending all of my time preaching. I wasn't really listening to what people were saying. And they felt like I didn't really care about solving their problems. When I went to reveal the root, I found fear of losing their autonomy and control. They were afraid that the hour-by-hours would be used to micromanage them, not to solve their problems. Knowing this, I was able to help them through this fear by making an alliance. And by transforming my approach, I was able to get the hour-by-hours up, see and solve the real problems in the cell, and break that bottleneck. After that, we were able to increase output to get out of backorder within 3 months. You too can defeat your resistobots. Imagine what would happen to the resistance you fight every day. How would you feel instead of exhausted? If you and your organization are struggling with resistobots, I run workshops to help you and your teams transform. Check out the info below. And if you want to learn more about your resistobots and the framework, you can find information and a free Find My Resistobot quiz on my website, kellymallory.com. Check out the link in the show notes. That's a wrap for this episode of Thoughts on Change. If you're also out there trying to move culture instead of just installing tools, hit subscribe and share this with a fellow CI warrior. And remember, Progress beats perfection, curiosity beats control, and culture beats everything. See you next time.